Mhm.
Hello.
Hello. Is anyone here? Okay. Well, let's introduce you. Hello, Robin.
Hi. Yep. As said, my name is Robin, and I am from the book Wormhole. And on my channel, I mostly talk sci-fi. So Sci-Fi September was like made for me almost. I do this every month. So yeah, I was pretty excited.
Yeah, Robin, I love your sci-fi booktube videos because
Like,
there's so few people who do that, and it's so sad.
honestly, my favorite part of Sci-Fi September is that I finally started to find booktubers that do read sci-fi. Because before, all of my mutual booktubers weren't reading sci-fi, and that's
Yeah.
fine. And it's still fun to talk to people who read something different than you. But also, it's kind of like, where are my people at? Like, I know I'm not the only one. So
Right. Yeah, I feel definitely the same way. So was glad to find your channel.
thank you so much.
Yeah, and I was very glad to buddy read what is it called? An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green with you. Um, so I am curious. I know we talked a little bit about this, but what did you end up rating the book?
I actually still haven't rated this book yet. And this is something I was gonna dispute today
Oh,
during
okay.
our stream is because I'm really torn about what I want to rate it. Obviously going by Goodreads rating, it's either gonna be a 4 or a 5 star.
Mhm.
But I'm conflicted because I really liked this book, but compared to everything I've read this year, it doesn't seem like it measured up as much as the 5 star reads I've read. But
Mm.
also I feel like I don't know why I wouldn't rate it 5 stars. It's such a trivial rating system, so I'm overthinking it now. But
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I really liked it. I ended up giving it 4 just because, like you said, it wasn't like as spectacular as like my favorites of this year, but it was still really enjoyable. I really liked it. Um, I think one of my only kind of issues with it though was the main character, which I know is what a lot of people say.
I
Yeah.
know when you messaged me on Discord, what do you think of the main character? And I was like, oh my gosh, she's gonna say that she loves this character or something, and I was not really into her character at all at this point. So I just remember being afraid to message you back and be like, yeah, I don't really care for her that much.
Yeah, April May, that was her name, right?
Yes.
She made a lot of decisions that I did not agree with.
Right. So
Mm.
a part of me is I'm not overly bothered when I don't like main characters unless they're just so painful to read. I can't keep on reading them. So for me, it wasn't too much of a downside that I wasn't really relating to her character or really liked her character. So it wasn't too much of a downside, but also I almost think she's intentionally not very likable.
Yeah, I agree with you,
If
yeah.
that makes sense. And this was one of my talking points is that I feel like Green, kind of made her this really flawed and not particularly likable person to kind of contrast who she is to the public. The public loves her. She has so many fans, she has haters as well.
Mhm.
But the public doesn't see her fans don't see this other side of her that is human and who isn't really special in any other way besides she just so happened to be in the right place at the right time. And I think he further perpetrates the idea by having her surrounded by a cast of characters who are so much more interested and
Yes.
likable than she is, and yet they're all in the background of her fame. I'm blanking on who the scientist's name was, but there's
Yeah.
It's been a while since I read
I
this, and
know.
I got it from the library, so I can't even like look it up. But there's a scientist character, and she's like, I think like
Miranda?
mid-20s. Miranda, yeah, that's
Yeah,
her.
yeah.
Yeah, and
She was
like
so cool.
I thought she was like the coolest character,
Yeah.
and but she's always like in the background, even though like she's the one who's kind of putting the science into the story that April tells the public. And yeah, it's just like that contrast. I think it worked really well, but also it's like really like why does April have to be the main character?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. I think like, I didn't like her, but I think that was definitely the point of it. Like, Hank Green definitely made her intentionally unlikable, and I think that was a really smart decision because if she's was just, like, this perfect character, then the book wouldn't be half as interesting.
I feel like I'd be super annoyed if she
Yeah,
was a very like perfect, lovable person, and it's just like what
yeah,
the heck. But I think also like part of it too is I think like he almost like suggests that like she didn't do anything to earn her fame, especially
mhm,
because she is surrounded by incredibly talented folks who take the back seat on like her fame, and
yeah,
yet she is the one who's famous. It kind of, I think, accurately portrays that like people who do get famous don't always deserve it. Sometimes it's just they were in the right place at the right time.
definitely, yeah. I felt so bad for her friend. Was his name Andy?
Andy, yeah.
I felt so bad for him. Although I know the sequel, kind of focuses more on him, I think. I haven't read it yet.
Neither have I. I was gonna ask, is it still from April's perspective, or
I don't
does it switch? Because I know it did switch a little bit at the end of the book. I think
yeah,
the very last section was
yeah,
from Andy. So,
yeah. I think it would be interesting to read from his perspective because
right.
it seemed like he had a lot going on in the background that we didn't really see because April was so wrapped up in herself all the time.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mm, interesting. Yeah, I wanna read the sequel eventually.
Me too. I had like two other buddy reads to do after this one, but if I didn't, I probably would have just read the sequel right afterwards. So yeah, I really enjoyed it enough that I'm like, okay, I want to read the second part.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Hank Green's writing. I've actually never read a John Green book, so
I was gonna ask, it's been a while since I read a John Green. Pretty much like I read his stuff like in high school when it was like age appropriate, and then
Mm,
like I think when I was like 19, I read An Abundance of Catherines, and I was just like, you know what? This isn't doing it for me anymore. Like I can't read this stuff anymore.
yeah,
Um, which
I've
his
been
stuff
wanting
wasn't bad.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I no, no, I mean, I know everybody loved it, but I feel like I kinda missed the window a little bit because I didn't read it in high school. But I've been wanting to read The Anthropocene Reviewed, his new nonfiction book. It's supposed
Oh, I
to be
didn't know
cool.
he did write that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So maybe I'll read Hank's brother.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It's so funny that you say that because to me it was like, oh my gosh, like John Green's brother's writing the book now. Like when I first saw An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, I remember when it came out and like having that thought of like, oh, like he's an author now too. Like, come on.
And I know he's a YouTuber too, but I've also never watched any of his videos.
Yeah,
So I just kinda went in blind. I did not know anything.
really.
Yeah, but it
That's
was good.
it's like a distant memory for me because like that was like early YouTube when I first started watching YouTube. Like
Mhm.
that's who I watched was like the Vlog Brothers, but like I kind of fell out of that like a long time ago. almost like a decade ago now, so it's just like a distant memory. But because of his background in like YouTube, I kind of like was interested to read this book because I felt like it would come from like a
Mm,
perspective through which he's actually lived through.
yeah.
I don't exactly know like the biography of like the Green brothers, but I'm assuming YouTube has a lot to deal with their fame, you know.
Probably, yeah.
Like I want to say YouTube probably came before like, John Green's books getting really popular or whatever. Um so yeah, I kind of figured that it would come from like a very like genuine and like personal place, at least for the storyline. So, and
Yeah,
it felt like it too.
yeah, it definitely felt like it. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm not, like, a internet celebrity, but even with my limited YouTube experience, I feel like it is pretty accurate. It was interesting to read, definitely interesting.
Right, I think it did capture like that internet fame very well. Obviously, I haven't
Yeah, I
experienced that personally, but just from like being like a participant on like social media and like
don't.
seeing like the kind of like rise and fall of like different personalities and just like yeah, just like witnessing a lot of this like happening from like that perspective. I'm like, this is highly believable. I would
Yeah.
believe this would happen.
Yeah, I think he really hit the nail on the head with 2 things in particular that I still really remember. One of them is when someone impersonated April May on Twitter, and she got an email saying that she was, like, such an evil person, but she, like, didn't even know what was going on. That is
Right.
so true. And then when the guy she was debating totally brought up her sexuality out of the blue, like, that is so
Hmm.
believable, especially in recent years, so believable. I think he really got the, like, vibe, like, if you wanna use that word, of the most recent years. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like reading both of those parts, like I definitely like had a physical reaction to
Yeah.
both of those. I was just like, you know,
Yeah, same.
it
But I
like
know
triggered my fight or flight.
yeah, no, I don't wanna oh, if I saw that debate in, like, real life, I would turn it off, I couldn't do it. Oh god. But,
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely captured the feeling of recent years, but I know we also talked about how that might kind of date it eventually because they had so many references to things. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's like a lot of pop culture referenced in it, and I don't read too much contemporary, so I don't know how contemporary writing really deals with this, but
Mm,
I know like some of like the references, I just remember like thinking to myself like this is gonna end up dating the book. Like I think I know like Queen was one of the clues. That is probably gonna stay true for a while because like
yeah,
who like they're legendary, like you know what I mean. But
yeah.
then there was like a mention. Well, I think like they mentioned like Skype, and I don't even think Skype is around anymore.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, they were talking on Skype a little bit. Yeah.
And like that was kind of jarring for me to read, and it's like,
No Zoom.
yeah, you know what I mean. Like Zoom is like kind of entirely replaced Skype at this point.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it just I remember reading it and thinking like, okay, some of these references are gonna really be dated. Or there was like one like meme he like mentioned in the book, and I'm like, this is already
Oh,
dated, like because this was from like when I was like 11. Like I can't remember
no.
what it was, but I was just like, this is like really old school memes. Like
Oh, no, I don't remember, but I believe it, yeah.
I wish I remember what it was. Oh, it was I think it was like hide your kids, hide your wife.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, that's like old now. Like I don't know if like she's supposed to be like 23, I think.
Yeah. I
And like I'm 25, so like I was young when that was like a thing, but like I can just like picture like okay, like in a decade, like a
Yeah,
25-year-old is gonna read this and is gonna be like, what? That's so weird and
yeah.
random. They're not gonna know what that is.
Oh
It's
God.
it's just a sentence though. I'm like really digging into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over
I
one
think
sentence.
it's really an interesting mix because this was for the prompt sci-fi contemporary, right?
Yes,
Which
yeah,
I've
or at least I
never
recall.
really, I don't know if I've never read a sci-fi contemporary, but I don't usually read them. So this was interesting in that regard too, to see how the sci-fi elements were integrated into like modern day. 'Cause,
Yeah.
yeah. And I
What I
like,
really sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that I liked that the alien robots kind of just remained a mystery the entire time, and you didn't really know any of the answers. I liked that.
Yeah, it definitely like kept my interest in the story just to like it was also like influenced by like her experiences herself, but also like I wanted to know like the mystery, like what happens when they do solve all the clues and like why are
Mhm.
these aliens really here? Like that did like, you know, keep my interest within the book.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved the dream aspect. I thought that was so cool.
That was like trippy cool. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like me just trying to like conceptualize that. And that's definitely something I haven't really seen before in the sci-fi.
Mhm.
So that I really enjoyed that aspect. I think like before then, when it was like the Wikipedia page and like it being slightly altered, at that point I did have some doubts in like the character's interest in it because I'm like, this is such like a tedious little thing and like for me like I always notice like some sort of misspelling or some sort of grammatical error when I read books and it's just kind of like I notice it and then I go on because we're all humans, like we all make mistakes and things like that always seems to like slip underneath the radar. So for me like I feel like that's like something I would notice on the Wikipedia page and I'd be like, huh, that's weird. And then like move on and like keep
Yeah,
going with my life rather than like how it's just like, I don't remember who the other characters were like involved at that point, but like they are all like really interested in this tiny like error. And like, so for me, like the believability was kind of like,
yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. It's
yeah.
like, would you really notice, especially on Wikipedia when it's able to be edited by everyone? Like, yeah, but the dream
Right.
was really cool.
But the dream, like at that when it got to the dream, then I was a lot more like interested and like I definitely could believe the response to the dream too. You know, everyone got really involved in it and like it kind of like spreaded this community of like, okay, like let's document like, you
Yeah,
know, with sort of like things we've uncovered and stuff. And like that I feel like is so realistic just because of like just seeing like the communities around like certain video games, like sometimes I'll like look something up and like people will like leave a note of like, you know, like there's like a glitch if you do this or like you know, like it is so like personalized. It's like something you wouldn't like see from anywhere else besides like some sort of community like collaboration like that. So for me I was like, this is so believable and like so incredibly cool too.
yeah, I thought like the whole subreddit thing, I thought he did that really well. Um,
Absolutely.
definitely. And I think like because you mentioned classics. I don't know if it was before we went live or right at the beginning, but I think like when we read classic sci-fi now, it's like kind of like a time capsule and we're seeing their technology from their perspective then. And I feel like this is going to be how it is in like 40 years if people still read this book, if it is still remembered. I think this will be a really good, like, capture of the moment that we live in right now. It'll be really interesting to read.
That's such an interesting point because now that you say it, like I can like picture it being like, okay, like, we're gonna
Right?
study this book
Yeah,
to learn about
me
social
too.
media in like the early 2000s, like not
Yeah,
early
I can
2000s,
totally
2010s.
picture, like, ninth graders in high school reading this for class.
That's so cool. Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. And like there's no other book I can really think of that has so effectively captured that. So like because of that I can definitely see like that happening.
Yeah, I think it could.
That's cool. I'm always thinking about like who's gonna be the greats like in the future, like like what books are really gonna
Mm.
last over the years and whatnot. So like I'm like I didn't think about that for this book, but like now that you say it, like yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I would teach it if I taught a lit class.
Right, yeah.
So, do you have I know you said you wrote some talking points.
Yeah, we did cover a couple of them
Uh-huh.
so far. Um So I'm just gonna go down the line. Actually, no, I'm gonna skip ahead because we briefly touched on April's sexuality and how that was
Um,
brought up as a like criticism of her. And the one thing I found really interesting is early on in the book when she first meets with I think it's like an agent
mhm.
who I don't remember her name, Jennifer, I think her name is.
Yes.
Alrighty. I should write names down
Yeah,
instead
me
of just
too.
talking. But when she first meets with Jennifer, this agent, the agent, asks all these personal questions about her, and one of them being, is she in a relationship? And April says, like, well, yeah, like I kind of have this girlfriend. And it leads to a conversation where the agent wants her to present as a lesbian rather
Mhm.
than bisexual, as she truly defines herself as. And that I found really interesting. And I think the book handles that in a very truthful way too, because when I look at celebrities, I feel like people do tend to either put them in one or two boxes, like they're either gay or they're either straight, and like
Yeah,
for some reason the public does have such a hard time accepting bisexuality. And like the one example I can think of is Kristen Stewart,
uh,
like because I honestly thought she was a lesbian for like the longest time, and like then I like more recently heard that she's actually bisexual, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And just like how cruel that is, you know?
yeah, it definitely captured that biphobic kind of outlook really well, especially, yeah, when it pertains to celebrities. Because like, people even if they say the word bisexual, a lot of people will just think like, "Oh, so she's a lesbian." It's like, "W w they're 2 different things." Like, no.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm trying to think. I feel like Freddie Mercury might have been actually
Yeah,
bisexual, but like for some reason we remember him as gay, like
me as well. Same thing.
it's so weird. Like, but I'm glad that he actually took time to point that out because that is such an accurate portrayal of like how we treat celebrities for some reason.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really like that he put that in. Like, he really didn't shy away from anything about the treatment of celebrities and how they're viewed. Like, he said it like it is. So, yeah, I appreciated that. I mean, like I said, I don't know anything about Hank Green or the Green brothers, but I appreciated that he did make the main character bisexual.
Hmm.
I thought that was, you know, a nice perspective to have 'cause, I can't think of a lot of books that are from a bisexual woman's point of view. Maybe there are,
Right.
I don't know, but this is one of the few that I've actually read, and it's just nice. Really nice.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think it was done really well, and um like not to spoil a later point, but when she does, like she does end up breaking up with her girlfriend, and then like, you know, she's interested in like male characters, and she ends up pursuing like a relationship she shouldn't have with like a female character. And I think it was done really tastefully. It wasn't like she was just like, oh,
Yeah.
like I can't decide, or
Mhm.
like, you know, I just want everyone, or
It
you know,
felt very
all.
realistic that way.
Yeah, that it was like just really tastefully done too.
Mhm.
Like staying true to like the nature of like being bisexual, while not like making her seem like she's like this sex fiend who like can't stay loyal. Like, so I think he did that really tastefully. Obviously he did his research, so good on him.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was very successfully done, I think. So, what other talking points did you write down? I know I said I was gonna write some down, but I didn't.
It's okay. I was literally thinking of these at work and just like typing them on my phone when I could. Um, so another talking point I had was I call it the cynicism of first contact.
Ooh.
And why do alien invasion plots always assume aliens will treat us like humans have treated each other and would only want to conquer? Um,
Interesting. This is like a thesis paper. I like that. It's interesting.
yeah, I'm gonna write a whole paper on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would.
I
Why
think
not?
this theme, the book did a really good job of bringing up and also challenging. I think what has become a very overdone concept of, okay, aliens have come to Earth and it leads to war, and it leads to like our enslavement, and it leads to all of like this bad, terrible stuff. And while in the book we don't particularly know why the aliens have come or what they really want, um, it's just like I'm like blanking on words, but like it just really challenged that notion, because they're just kind of there to observe and to appreciate like Earth life.
Yeah.
And yeah, like they're just like statues that just observe. Um, and so it being so like passive, I think really challenges that common trope, as well as you know, it like leads to what becomes one of the main conflicts in the book, is that like April has her following and this other guy has a following, and I can't remember his name either.
Okay.
I want to say it's like Peter or something, like
Yeah, I was gonna
Peter,
say
and his
Peter.
last name is also like Peter. It isn't. Um,
I thought that was really like if aliens came to Earth right now, I feel like that is probably kind of along the lines of what would happen. Like there would definitely be two sides to it and people fighting over it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I felt like the opposing side, I think they're called the defenders, just to make it easier for me to talk about it. Um, I feel like that is such a realistic like side to like come together. Like especially like in the time of COVID, now that we have like people who are like so suspicious of like vaccines, and like that there's like these two sides, and it's just, and it really does come out of fear, and that is something that Green does a good job of relaying with the Defender's side, is that it comes from fear, that
Yes.
like they are afraid that the aliens are going to hurt them, and they let that fear kind of like dictate these sometimes really dramatic like actions that these people
Yeah.
are taking.
Scary actions. Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
and and I also think it's like realistic to have that side, considering like what so much of like alien invasion plots in science fiction has been, like that, you know, they always expect the aliens to treat us like colonialism has treated other folks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like as humans we have a long history of just treating other people really terribly and wanting to conquer and wanting to enslave and all of these like terrible things that I don't know. I always like as a consumer of like science fiction, whenever I read those plots, I'm always like, do you really think that like a completely different species is gonna act the same way that we do?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like if you not to say that those stories are inherently bad or anything, like, they can definitely be enjoyable, but I feel like the point one of the points of science fiction is to explore different possibilities and, like,
Hmm.
really think outside the box, you know? And I feel like that idea of aliens acting like humans is so limiting because it really by also putting the aliens in the box that we are in, we also just keep ourselves in the box and, like, we don't think about
Hmm.
other possibilities. And I just wish yeah, I like that this really subverts that storyline. I think it was really, really well done. Oh, I had something else to say, but on the topic of the debate and that Peter guy, I think something that also really stood out to me was when April at one point, she wanted to, like, have an actual human conversation with Peter,
Hmm.
just, like, try and understand each other, but he wouldn't do it, and he just kept attacking her. I feel like that's so realistic.
It is, and it's so like scary to witness even like on page form because like I've been in that conversation so
Yeah,
many times, where it's just like I'm really trying to understand someone or and have them understand me in return and it's just like it's talking to a wall, that
yeah,
like this person is just so dead set on fighting that like
yeah.
yeah.
It's like they don't even know the point of what they're fighting for anymore, they just wanna fight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And that's absolutely true, I think.
yeah. I think yeah, Hank Green definitely captured this climate very well.
Right, yeah. I think, like, not to compare Hank Green to his brother, but I do think that, like, he went a lot deeper in, like, his message than John Green books do. But I will say, like, John Green is, like, a teenage, like, young adult,
Yeah,
like, contemporary story writer. So, like, that's okay. That's his genre. Like, that's the nature of that genre. Whereas this is adult fiction, science fiction. So you do want it to have a little more meaning, but I think like that was my fear going into this was that it was going to be very like bubblegummy and like like too like light and um doesn't really dig into its full potential, but I think he did do a really good job of just like absolutely digging into it
yes, definitely.
and delivering.
Delivering, yes.
Well, I do see like similarities between his style and John Green's as well, but
Oh,
like
that's
they're
interesting.
brothers, so it's like they live with each other for a long period of their time. Like, of course, they're gonna kind of talk like each other, so
Yeah.
like that's understandable.
So,
But
yeah.
back on the like what you said about like I can't remember what you said about like how imagining aliens to be like us is like so like putting them in a box. I
Mm,
also think that is incredibly vain of us to assume that like another species would be exactly like us and just like looking at other like animal species on earth and like seeing their like social circles and like how they live like it's so vastly different from
yeah.
us. Like there is such a variation there. I think there's
Mhm.
just something so vain about being like, yes, any like dominant species is going to act exactly like us, and it's the only way to act. It almost
Yeah.
seems so.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just it's just
Glad that
so.
puts humans in our place.
Yeah.
why I like sci-fi.
Me too.
So, the
And
next,
sorry.
no, no, go on.
I was just gonna go to a different point if you had nothing else to
Okay.
say on it.
Yeah, no, no.
So the other talking point I had was about like the clues within the dreams, and one thing I really liked about it was how diverse they were, and how even he
Yeah,
goes to say that most clues couldn't be solved by just one person, and that you really needed cooperation because it would be like, okay, a clue might be partially in this like foreign language, and then it might like involve like a belief system of like a completely different culture, and like just like the way it was set up that just like absolutely forced like humans to interact with each other and work together to solve it. I thought that was so brilliant and so
yeah.
cool. Like
That
so
was
well done.
so good. Like, yeah, I think that I don't know, I mean, I think if we were in in that world, we would probably be on April May's side. We wouldn't be with Peter, but I think it even with everything that these alien statue things did, I think that that kind of almost proves April May's side because they it feels like they wanted to learn from humanity, but they also kind of wanted to teach humanity something about unity, and I really liked that aspect of it.
Absolutely. And I think he really delivers that point with like a lot of nuance and yeah, yeah, just like that puzzle alone that really forced everyone to work together that really, delivered on that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And
And
I
it's
like
like
that the president was kind of in on it too.
that was kind of trippy to actually involve like a president character, and I
Yeah.
don't remember exactly when this book was written, or I think it came out 2017, and so it was probably written like 2016 or earlier. But I'm like, did he mean for this to be Hillary? Like, because she is a
Either
woman
way, she was
president.
pretty cool. She was a cool character.
She was a cool character, but like reading that was just like teardrop, like the things we
Yeah.
didn't know yet.
Oh, yeah.
um, but like the dream was like so vivid that like I could actually like picture it, and like I think at like one point there was like an Arby's, which made me laugh because I used to work at Arby's. And I
Oh,
was
really?
like just like having like that small touchstone of like, oh wow, I could probably do that clue just because like I worked at Arby's at one point in my life. But there
Yeah,
was something just like so effectively surreal about the dream, and yet so vivid that like I could picture this as like an actual environment that I'm like standing in. Like
yeah.
he did a really good job describing that, and I think it also added the sci-fi element to the book more. That like I think like I've only read like one other like contemporary sci-fi, and it was very much just like everyone on Earth for like majority of the book, and then finally they end up in space at the end of the book, and it really didn't have like the same like ever present
Hmm.
um presence as this book did. That it was very contemporary and very set in our time and our world, but like also it had these little touchstones that just like remind you along the way, which I thought was really well done.
Yeah, I think like I was kind of worried because I am not the biggest contemporary fan. So I was worried that it was just going to be a contemporary story with just like a little bit of sci-fi thrown in just so he can call it sci-fi
Hmm.
and have a wider appeal. But I think he like the sci-fi aspect of the story was actually really, really well crafted and really unique. It was so well done. Yeah, I agree with you. Definitely really well done.
I think like my only other concern when I first started this book too was that like I'm not super into like celebrity stories.
Well, that's
for me, it's kind of the same as like I don't like royalty plots either. I don't like reading about royalty characters usually. So I was kind of worried it would be so um I feel like over glamorized, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that it would just be like really like, you know, make it seem like her life is so like awesome and like her only problem is she's too famous, like, you know.
Mm.
But instead it was like reading the book, sometimes it was like hard to believe she was famous, if that makes sense. Like she just seems so human to me that like whenever it is like, oh, she's recognized in public and someone wants a selfie with her, I'm like, that's weird. Like and but I'm sure she feels the same way, like going through that too, that she's just like, yeah, I'm just a person, but also sometimes people recognize me and act this way. Like I think that was very authentically like replicated in the reading experience.
Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely Hank Green definitely put his own experience in there, and it really came across well. Yeah.
And I love to hear him like actually talk about like, you know, what parts like are things that he's actually experienced and like
Mm.
how that inspired him. Like I'd be genuinely interested in hearing him talk about that.
Yeah, me too. I'd like to hear, like, any videos he's made on the book or interviews. It'd be interesting to hear what he
I
has
don't
to.
know if there's any out there. There probably is, but I'm just like, yeah, I'd be down to watch that.
Yeah. Well, what is the next book called? A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor?
I think that's it. I
Yeah.
was just like, it's a bunch of words.
Yeah, I don't know. I really liked the book, and it did end on such a cliffhanger, but I'm almost kind of a little bit scared to read the next one just because I'm afraid I'm not gonna like it as much. Yeah.
Actually, okay. So I do have a little beef with how the book ended
Ooh.
because when it changes like perspective, and this is just like part of me like not liking a certain trope. I don't usually like it when the book reveals at the end that it is the main character that's actually writing this book. Like, and I
Uh,
feel like it kind of did that near the end.
yeah.
But also there's like the cool thing about the writing in the book is that sometimes like April will be talking about something like happening in the book, but she will be talking about it with like hindsight in mind. So she'll be like, what I didn't know at this time was that this was happening while I was doing this. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But like it kind of also conflicts with how it ends. Where I don't, are we, can we say the spoiler?
Yeah. There's only one person watching right now, so
Thank you for watching. Hi.
thank you.
Like she kind of like dies at the end, and I put that in quotation marks.
Mhm.
Um, as well as like the like final scene, she's like in peril. So like obviously she's not like scratching this down like while she's
Yeah.
like about to die in quotation marks. Um, and then it like goes to Andy's perspective, and he kind of like talks about like his thing and like catches us up with like what happened since then. And I didn't like that sort of jump, that like it just kind of ruined the immersion, that it was like, okay, well, like she actually wrote this. And I think he even like says like a line that like this book that she was writing, that like he got a hold of like this copy of the book. And I'm like, well, how did she fucking write those scenes where she's like in peril?
Yeah,
So
I totally get what you mean. I think my mind just kind of glossed over that part 'cause, but now that you say that, it is a bit strange.
yeah, and this might just be me because I just like really don't like that trope. Most of the time, it doesn't work out for me. So what else I was gonna say? Oh, so the next book,
Mhm.
I've lost my train of thought. But I'm like, okay, we gotta talk about the end, and then we'll talk about the next book. I definitely want to read the next book, but I do also like understand like and kind of feel like the same hesitance that you feel because this one was so well done, and I feel like the next book is going to be very different, and I'm a little worried it might get like very tonally different too, since
Mhm.
like as the book ended, like April is dead in quotation marks, and then she is like she comes back at the very end, and I feel like there's gonna be some weird alien reasons behind why she's back, and then it's like, well, is she really gonna be human anymore?
Yeah,
And I think it even hints at that very early on in the book. I want to say within the first chapter, like she mentions something like, I think she says, like, I'm only human, or maybe I'm not, or something like that. That's probably not the line
oh,
at all. But I remember reading that when like I first started the book and like kind of like understanding, okay, like she's gonna go through some sort of transformation.
hmm,
So
interesting.
So I think it's very leaning towards like she's going to be very different, and particularly if we do continue to follow her perspective, I feel like it might ruin what this book had going for it, which was that April is very like basic and kind of boring and just a human being. If
Yeah,
she's like suddenly like an alien now, you know?
yeah. I think maybe the biggest reason why I'm so apprehensive about reading the sequel is that, like I said, the aliens are such a mystery throughout the whole book, and you don't really learn. I mean, they kinda hint at, like, what they think their purpose is, but you don't really know what exactly they're there for, and they don't really do anything, like, concrete, you know?
Hmm.
And then they just leave, so it's like, I'm kind of worried that the explanation about the aliens isn't going to live up to the suspense of it, you know?
Right.
Yeah, if he does explain it, I don't know if he will, but
Yeah, I feel like it would be weird if he didn't. But also, yeah, I kind of agree with you there that I
Mhm.
feel like I don't know if there really is an answer that I would like that isn't just like as nuanced as it was in the first book. Now I'm like, well, maybe there shouldn't be a second book. Like,
Yeah.
just end it there.
Yeah, but we'll see. I might read it by the end of the year. I might not. We'll see.
I'm hoping to, but also like I always have too much on my TBR, so I really like jump
Yeah.
around a lot. That's like my only beef with like doing series or like any like thing that's not a standalone is that like I feel like I gotta put like the other things on my TBR on hold if I'm gonna finish a series, you know?
Yeah, series are
So
a lot of pressure.
yeah, it's too much of a commitment. Like but yeah, I do want to read the next book at least.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we both enjoyed the book so much because sometimes I've had some bad luck with buddy reads.
Oh no.
Like, I mean, I don't wanna but, I buddy read Red Rising a few months ago, and we both really hated it, so
At least like you both hated it, because I feel like
yeah.
the worst case scenario is one of you loves it and the other one hates it, and then you
Oh,
gotta
yeah,
be
no, I
like,
haven't had that happen, thankfully. I've had most of the time we agree,
that's
but
good at least.
I'm glad, like, we both really got something positive out of it and really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So we're at 49 minutes. Do you have anything else you wanna mention?
I did exercise my entire talking points list. It was very fancy and official.
Okay. Once again, thank you for doing that because we would have just been sitting here wondering what to say if you left it to me, so
Right, it's like, what do you think of it? It's good.
yeah. Yeah, thank you.
No. I'm like like I gotta write things down or else I'll never think of it. Like when I first started booktube, I would just like go in raw when I would do videos and I would just be like
Oh,
staring at a camera forever just because I'm like I can't remember anything that happened in this book. So
yeah. No,
adapt.
I'm the same way, yeah. Yeah, well, alright, so oh, we just lost our our viewer. I was
Just
gonna say, you can, plug yourself. Well, why don't you do it anyway?
I'm yeah.
Play
Yeah, again, you can find me on the book Wormhole on BookTube.
Yes,
And
please watch
yeah,
Ruben's videos.
thank you.
They're so good for sci-fi recs.
That's what I do. That's what I try to do anyway.
Yes. Alrighty, Robin, thank you so much. I'll let you go to sleep after your long workday.
I gotta get in my jammies.
Alright. Have a nice night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.